We're back, and you are with Villaincast, BJJ Anti-Heroes, with myself, Chris the Villain Paynes. Weekly podcast featuring either my fellow black belt Naki Arshed on our show Reap the Week, or compelling interviews with other personalities across Jiu-Jitsu. But before we jump into this next show, a thank you to our Patreon subscribers. For exclusive video content and online coaching, you can find out more via chrispaynesbjj.com, or you can join our Discord channel to put your ideas through for future episode discussions. For now, though, Meerkatsu. Afternoon, sir.
Hello. Right, Chris?
Well, I flick into that professional mode there. It's all written and scripts and everything.
That was incredible. I've never seen you like that before. That was really. You have an alter ego.
Several, unfortunately. Yeah. So I mean, we were saying just before we kicked in, you are obviously very well known throughout the jiu-jitsu world for your artwork and your clothing. And if there's anyone in jiu-jitsu that hasn't already bought a Meerkatsu piece, they will one day. Like, everyone's got one in their wardrobe. I have several.
I should have come on brand, but this is just some generic TK Maxx top.
I should have got my t-shirt as well.
Underneath, so that counts, doesn't it? And so are you. You're wearing the Meerkatsu hot pants I gave you, aren't you?
Yeah, the spats, the unicorn spats. Yeah, so we were saying, like, I started just shy of 15 years ago, and when I first saw you 15 years ago, you were the review guy. This is pre a lot of your artwork. So I remember obviously the first stuff with tatami, etc. But you were the gi review guy, and I think I bought my first tatami gi off of one of your recommendations.
Good.
But for anyone who does not somehow know who you are, sir, and hasn't put a face to the name, would you like to introduce yourself?
Well, my full name is Seymour Yang, and I go under the jiu-jitsu name of Meerkatsu. And it's interesting, we were talking earlier, you get different generations of people who have come into whatever I do. At the moment I'm doing a lot of artwork, but I'm also doing some technique videos, just a few to help promote my club basically. So they may know me because of a recent video I did on animal movement drills, that went kind of viral. But going way back, I started showing off my stuff on the internet when I started reviewing gis. Because gis were... You're bombarded with gi brands right now, but back in the day, we're talking 2005, 2006, there were very few gi brands, and they were all sourcing pretty much from factories in Pakistan and China who weren't used to making jiu-jitsu gis, so the quality varied a lot. You could buy a gi from one brand for the same price you could buy a gi from a competing brand, and there'd be completely different things. Over the years, obviously, as they've become more expertise and the demands have got higher, the gi market has leveled out. So, but that's for another conversation. But back in the day, it was very hard to find a decent fitting gi. So I thought, well, I'm spending all this money on the gi. Let me just write down my thoughts and put it on a blog, because blogs were a thing back then. Very popular. Simply because we didn't have all the crap that we have now, like TikTok and things like that. The only way to sort of find out about the bigger world was to, number one, YouTube, and number two, read someone's blog. And I guess I was one of the more earlier people in the jiu-jitsu scene, certainly in Britain, to write a blog on a regular basis that was worth coming back to read stuff. A lot of them were reviews. Some of them were just musings about how I was finding life as a white belt, straight blue belt. And that's how it started. And I started Jiu-Jitsu back in 2003. And the funny story I was going to tell you about that, I was just literally speaking to my wife yesterday about it. And I said, in 2003, my fiancée at the time, now wife, she was sent on a photography mission by her boss. She was part of a photography crew, so she was setting up all the locations. And he said, right, I know you're getting married this year, but need you to go on this project for me, and you're going to be in the Far East for 7 weeks. And she goes, oh, I can't really do that because I've got a wedding coming. He goes, well, you're going or you're fired. So he was a bit Alan Sugarish. So 2003, he sends her off to Nepal. No internet, nothing. So I don't even hear from her. With a photographer to stock photography shoots. So I'm at home. I have my day job, but I'm at home twiddling my thumbs. Bearing in mind I wasn't full Meerkatsu back then. And I thought, I'm going to take up another hobby. And I took up Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu because I heard about it. I was already doing Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, and a lot of the Japanese Jiu-Jitsu guys were hearing this thing about Gracie Jiu-Jitsu. So I thought, well, there's a gym sort of down the road from where I work. Let's pop in. And that's how I started. 2003, May or April, around about that time. And the rest is sort of history.
The amount of us who, in those early days where we didn't, especially in the UK where it wasn't big at all and MMA wasn't a thing, I was the same. I was a Japanese Jiu-Jitsu Black Belt, and I remember the old Bullshido forums with Slidey Foot. And when I first met him, Jean, I was like, oh, no way, I've known you about you for years. But I thought BJJ stood for blowjob job. And I thought the Gracies were just like another family that taught Japanese Jiu-Jitsu. Like, oh, like my coaches. I was wrong. So which school was it then that you were close to?
So I worked, my office still is there actually, and we're based on the Harrow Road. And that's where Carlson Gracie London first had one of their very early embryonic gyms, full-time gyms, in Royal Oak, which is West London, near Maida Vale. And they called it the boiler room, and it literally was the boiler room of a tower block. So you had the tower block, and you'd go down the stairs, where the janitor would normally probably keep, locked up children. And that's where they just had these awful jigsaw mats, like the cheapest third-hand jigsaw mats they probably acquired from a youth centre. A few token jigsaw mats on the walls, and my first lesson there, I walked in, and it was very intimidating because you had mostly Brazilian instructors. You had Nelson Solari there, Wilson was there, two very, very prominent OGs of the Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu scene, certainly in London. You know of Dicky and Simon Hayes. They were blue belts by the time I joined, so they were there, and a whole bunch of bouncers and big scary guys, and women as well, big scary women as well. We can't forget the women they were. And there's little old me rocking up, and they said, "You knew?" I said, "Yeah." "Do you have a gi?" "No." "Here's the loaner gi," and it would never been washed. It's a judo gi, like 500 grams or whatever, 700-gram judo gi. You know those like double weave gis that are like so thick you can't grab? So you can imagine the years of months of sweat accumulating. It'd never been washed. So I put it on, and they didn't have a belt for me, so they have this belt, and it's, the competition blue and green belt, blue and yellow and green belt. They put that on me, so I clearly looked like the newbie. There's no way to hide it. I looked like the newbie. And the warm-ups were like 20 minutes of this. You lie down on the ground, you're doing this. They love their neck exercises. I've never done that since, in any other jiu-jitsu academy. We never did head nodding neck exercise. They just did that around the circle. So you count to 10, and the next person counts to 10, and the next person counts to 10. And there might be 20, 30 people in the class. So you're doing like 100 of the or more. And then it got to sparring. The technique was cool. The first lesson was a spider guard, which is kind of an odd thing to learn, considering that we teach fundamentals now and beginner this and that, but I just walked straight into spider guard. Spider guard to triangle, spider guard to armbar, and spider guard sweep. And I thought, this is cool. And when's the sparring? So we did sparring. I teamed up with somebody who was, again, Brazilian, and he just looked at me and goes, "Are you new?" And I said, "Yeah, but I'm a black belt in Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, so I've done some ground fighting." And he went, "It's not the same. Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu is an extreme sport. Anyway, I'll show you." And he proceeded to beat the shit out of me for the next 5 minutes. And I mean, really, legally using jiu-jitsu. But I'd never, ever experienced that in my life. It was a real eye-opener. And I think if it wasn't for that really tough, rough, old-school sparring, I probably wouldn't have been that, had that epiphany. Going, wow, this is almost like real fighting. And that's what I wanted to learn. Whereas in Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, we learnt techniques, but we didn't do sparring. So the difference was night and day back then, and it really opened my eyes. Although we wouldn't do that nowadays to beginners, like literally put them in the deep end and beat the shit out of them and say, "Well, if you're coming back, it's sink or swim." That kind of was the attitude back then, which I'm sure you felt as well when you first did your first sessions.
Yeah, it's amazing how much everything has changed in the past 13 years. Like, we care about people now. What's that way? Like, there's health.
We care that they come back.
Yeah, yeah, they come back. Oh, you're worthwhile. It's funny, like, so we've almost had the same origin story. I was talking to someone about this recently. Is that I was Japanese Jiu-Jitsu Black Belt, and I entered into a Judo Newaza, the old UMA up here.
I remember that.
Oh yeah, and back to back on the floor, and because I was a Jiu-Jitsu Black Belt, I entered in a more advanced category, and so my first fight was against a BJJ Blue Belt. Second fight was against a Judo Black Belt, and my third fight was against Paul Cole when he was still a purple belt.
Right. Wow.
He flying
Legend.
armbarred me from kneeling. But I was there in a karate gi in my black belt, warming up with chain punches. About
brilliant.
to go. I'd never sparred before. I'd been down to like fighting fit a couple of times and I had my head kicked in. Like I think I had like 3 sessions at this point. But I was like completely oblivious. I'd never worn a gi to a competition. I essentially went into a BJJ competition wearing cheese wire. And yeah, I didn't know what guard was. I'd never been put in a submission, so all I knew was to scream. So similar.
What was the submission? What was the submission?
Paul Cole got me in a flying armbar.
Flying armbar, yeah.
From kneeling. And the blue belt just held me in close guard for 5 minutes, but the judo black belt got me like a clock choke or something, and I just screamed. So
a manly scream.
Yeah. So we've had a very similar like epiphany, like, oh, this is real fighting. I don't know what I was doing, but you did it in like a relatively controlled environment.
Yeah. Oh my god, to actually compete as well.
Some of my students from my Japanese Jiu-Jitsu gym came with me to like support, like, yay, Chris. Woo.
Were they all doing this at the end?
And there's me just like screaming as they're trying to rip my head off. So we wouldn't let students do that these days. Hopefully that doesn't affect it. Well, I can cut it out if I need to. I can paste it together.
So okay, you got my story about the my first ground fighting competition.
No, I kicked out just as I was about to hear that. So
I'll repeat the story again.
Yes,
with added emphasis on the funny bits. So just following on from what you said, I had my first ground fighting tournament. I was still doing Japanese Jiu-Jitsu, but I had done a year's worth of BJJ. Actually, not with Carlson's this time. I had joined Eddie Cohn's. But that's an aside. Because once a year, our Japanese Jiu-Jitsu Association would have a big meeting. You'd have a seminar with loads of these red belts, or whatever belts they use. And right at the end of the day, a bunch of us would do some tournaments like ground fighting, kata, just almost as a fun thing. It wasn't taken that seriously. Apart from me, I took it very seriously. So I thought with my 1 year of BJJ, I'm going to absolutely wipe the field with this ground fighting tournament. So we did this. We didn't start back to back, but we started on one knee. You grab, and I was doing cartwheel guard passes. I pulled guard and then intentionally opened my guard just because I wanted to show the effectiveness of BJJ against somebody who didn't do BJJ but did regular ground fighting. And to be fair, he didn't do anything against me, but it was just me dicking around. It was 3 minutes of me dicking around. There's actually grainy footage of me on YouTube doing this. And I was shocked to discover that I'd lost the match because the referee was just looking at me going, what was that? And he awarded it to the other guy because the other guy wasn't dicking around. So that was about almost 20 years ago. And fast forward to last year where I would enter a black belt tournament at the Mauricio Cup. And I also was dicking around using your shit. And then there's video on YouTube of me dicking around using defensive jiu-jitsu, understandably not winning the match because I'm just dicking around. So in both cases I didn't get submitted, so I count that as a moral victory.
Yeah, exactly. Just at least you have form and consistency over 20 years. Just doesn't matter if you're a white belt or a black belt, you just dick around. So you started through Carlson's and then you came up through Mill Hill and Nick Brooks, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, just prior to Mill Hill, a new club had opened up near where I live in East London, run by Eddie Cohn. So I was with Eddie for about 3 years, 3 or 4 years, and then we moved house to North London, and coincidentally, Nick had just opened up his gym in Mill Hill, so that's when I joined his. So I joined Mill Hill, and honestly, I can't remember the time, but I was a blue belt something stripe back then. And I'm quite open about this. I felt that being a blue belt in my previous gym and then blue belt at Mill Hill was worlds apart, because Nick was a very competition heavy club. Everyone competed. They competed from white belt onwards. And at previous club, no disrespect to Eddie, but he doesn't focus on the competition side. It's all about the technique. And interestingly, as an aside, Eddie has since evolved into a much more self-defense focused, sort of old school Gracie style Jiu-Jitsu academy, and all respect to him, and we're still good friends. But when I transitioned to Nick, the difference was light and day. It really was. I had never experienced training Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu in a heavy competition heavy environment, because every round, even if they're not trying to kill you, there's purpose, there's an objective to achieve. There's, some guy's got a tournament in 2 weeks, because can we start from guard? Yeah, okay, start from guard. And he's trying to really try and submit you or sweep you, as opposed to dicking around, which is what I'm used to, right? So it was quite a cultural change. I think my Jiu-Jitsu benefited from that, and but it's horses for courses. I don't really go into a debate of old school Gracie versus more modern gyms, because there's no right or wrong, in my opinion, and we're all here to learn from each other. I'm sure there's stuff you still use from your Japanese jiu-jitsu, like wrist locks and things like that you sort of cheekily add in every now and again, because I do. If I'm going to teach wrist locks on Thursday, because these guys, even guys who trained with me for past 5-6 years, if they don't do wrist locks, they don't know them, they're not going to know. So how are they going to learn? So I'm going to show them some wrist locks. What the hell?
The Aikido wrist throw?
That's great.
As in when you grab the hand and you just roll it outwards.
Yeah.
And they Steven Seagal through the air.
Yeah.
Yeah, I've been hitting that on some blue belts recently. So just and I scream Aikido as I do it.
It's just exposure. If your students have never been exposed to it, and then to have it done for the first time, they're like, this shouldn't work. What is this shit?
Yeah.
I just did it on you.
Exactly. It does work. Speaking of Eddie Cohn, then, were you there when Viking Wong was there?
Yes, Viking. Yeah, we're good friends.
Yeah. He was he was in one of my first competitions.
Oh, sorry about that.
Yeah, I think he just got his blue belt when I competed against him. I saw a blog post where he'd written about, hey, I had this blue belt, and I fought him at Ground Control. That's going back Manchester, 2009.
It's a no-gi competition, isn't it?
Yes. Very, very busy competition. Considering this was 13, 14 years ago. I think there was at least 30 plus people in my division at white belt, that long ago. And the final was me and Viking. So yeah, he then went to Urban Kings for a bit. I saw him again there, and then he's in Hong Kong now, isn't he?
I think he might be in China now. I've kind of lost track of what he's up to, but for a brief period, we were sort of in the same gym, and then after I left to go to Mill Hill, we used to still meet up, because we had this thing called the Chinese BJJ Association, where a bunch of us Chinese or Chinese-looking people, or even not even Chinese people at all, would join and meet up, and we'd find a different gym around London, just to roll. It was just an open mat. And then we'd go for a massive dim sum afterwards. So I kind of spent more time with Viking during that thing. He's a very quietly spoken guy. He does his talking on the mat, but he's, like yourself, legitimately good rolling person to roll and compete against. I mean, he's very, very good. Even back when he was a white belt, he's one of those guys it just comes naturally to him. I think it helps that he was either an Olympic swimmer or potentially an Olympic swimmer in his youth. So he clearly has that athletic heritage.
Oh damn! I didn't know about that about him, but I remember him being jacked. That's all I remember. I think that it's amazing. Look back at that first tournament that I actually did well at. I think it was October 2009, and Saul Rogers was there, who obviously went on to Ultimate Fighter, and he still trains. And Viking was in that division with me. So yeah, I was like, damn, the dropout rate wasn't as high as you think it would be.
No, old school legends.
Old school,
And
yeah.
we're all still knocking around, I imagine, but just not online and not needing to show off, because let the kids do that. I'm just running my gym, or I'm just teaching. Yeah, so I was at Eddie's for a bit, and then when I moved to North London, Nick had just opened up. He'd already been training with Rogers for a while, and he was, again, he comes from a traditional jiu-jitsu background. He was a 5th degree black belt in his own style, in the style that he was teaching, but he just thought, I don't want to do this anymore. I love grappling, I love competing. So he just converted that gym into, almost overnight, converted that gym into Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu, and put it under as an affiliate of Rogers. And all the guys who wanted to stay with him, they stayed with him, and all the guys who wanted to not deal with that and carry on the traditional jiu-jitsu, they left with the other instructor to do that. I think they're both in Mill Hill. I haven't spoken to the other guy for a while now, but I used to visit a lot, even in his Japanese jiu-jitsu days, because the club I was at and his club were kind of like, not affiliates, but we would be friends, so we would sometimes turn up to each other's clubs just for a little bit of us play around. And I always knew back then Nick is the person I would love to learn from, because he's just one of those people that had so much martial art knowledge, let alone his Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu knowledge, which people know about now, but even back then, his general knowledge of fighting, combat, martial arts, just is encyclopedic. And I just thought, this guy can really teach me stuff. He's a proper sensei, old school sensei, although he would hate to have been called that, because he's, just call me Nick, for fuck's sake, call me none of that sensei shit.
Oh yeah, like you could. I went to Mill Hill a couple of times, and you could definitely feel that it's always from the top down that creates the environment, and you could definitely feel that with the Mill Hill environment. The few times that I went, I think I went. When did I go? I think I was a blue belt. Nastasio was there, and I think he was wrecking people at the time.
Silver.
Yeah.
Yeah.
See, we're all connected. You know Max Bickerton, who trains with Silver. I think he runs London.
I don't know him.
Oh, okay.
Right.
Well, he's one of those other black belts. He trains with Ross, Owen, and a few of the other big hitters around London. He was actually one of my first students.
Oh, really? Wow.
Yeah, he's from up here. He was at sixth form and college and all those other things. And he came to my gym for a period of time. When he went to university, he went to Braulio's. Finished university, got a job in King's Cross. Went to Urban Kings with Jude and Viking, and then gets in with Silver and Ross and Owen. And
wow, so he's pretty much had non-stop high-level training all throughout.
I was a white belt. I have no idea what the hell was happening. I think I had 1 year more than he did, and he had 0. But that's so it's there's some of us old school people still knocking around, and it's I guess that jiu-jitsu scene in the UK can still be very entwined. We all seem to know each other in various ways.
It's still quite small, even though you probably see a full-time gym in almost every big city and town, and sometimes multiple. I still think the community is small enough where you recognise faces when you go to seminars, you go to competitions. All right, mate. All right. Half the people I don't remember their name, but they just go, "Remember last time I saw you at that thing? All right, man, how's it going?" And there's a really good brother and sisterhood community, which I still like. I'd hate for that to change, but I would still like jiu-jitsu to grow more.
I think we're somewhere in the region of like 500 UK black belts by now. It's something ridiculous. I think it was 300 a few years ago when I got mine. So it boggles my mind that there could be 500 black belts just dotted around the UK. Wow. And trying to get just 1 or 2 to get into a competition together is nigh on impossible. It's always empty.
I'm sympathetic to at least my division. I'm 55, so I'm Master 5.
Oh, damn.
Sorry, I'm 54, so I'm Master 5. Next year I'll be Master 6. I'm also under 60 kilos, so I'm tiny, right? So I'm like almost rooster weight. How many rooster weight geriatric pensioner black belts are there in the UK? In the world? I mean, probably quite a few, but people that actually are committed to competing, which is why last year I wanted to do these competitions. I competed 3 times, and I wanted to do these competitions because I thought I may never get the chance again, and also I just wanted to just have a swan song before I decide that I don't want to compete anymore. And it was also good motivation for me to just moan at my own students for not competing. So look, if I can fucking do it, you can do it, and I'm as scared as you are. You try and fight a black belt who's going to rip your flipping foot off with a heel hook, you know. And all you have to do is enter a white belt tournament, you know. I'm just saying, do it. So that was my motivation.
I think that's something that Christian Graugart said, is that for any of those people like complaining about when they compete at all the various belts, like, okay, yeah, if you're a blue belt or a purple belt, anyone you're fighting is maybe 1 year above or below your experience level. You go at black belt, I'm Andre Galvao's weight. Like, I don't want that smoke. And then, you know, you're probably in the same kind of region as like Mikey Musumeci, and you think, I don't want that. Like, there's a different breed there.
Did you see him doing so? He's posted videos of him doing Muay Thai in Thailand.
Yeah.
He's taking that up now, and presumably with a view of maybe doing some MMA in the future. But he's just one of those geniuses that has he's just like a little athlete, and he just picks it up. He goes and at a very high level. Yeah,
exactly. And it's you said there, like, if you're whinging at blue belt, like, you go on then. I have to fight these savages. I could be against someone who's like maybe, you know, been a black belt as long as I've been training. Like, what does that tell you? I don't want this. So you talked about, you know, when you first started, you were doing a lot of the gi reviews, and I think I remember those days of the Bad Boy. Was it Bad Boy? Blitz. The Blitz gis. Good Lord. Bad Breed. That was it. I'm pretty sure my rash guard of them melted. Yeah, that's the quality. And the old Yako stuff where you had the rubberized
print on the front.
Yeah. And the shorts would last one use before the rubber would come off. The old days of jiu-jitsu before we could make decent clothing. But I say you I think along with Slidey Foot, you were one of the original people to review seminars and review early YouTube work, which I think that just means Submissions 101. I think that was all that was around in those days.
Yeah, you're right, actually. I mean, fair play to, I forgot his name, but he got
found
out, didn't he? Found out that he was nothing more than he wasn't even graded in BJJ, and yet he was showing black belt techniques. Like, this is how you're going to win a match. Yeah, Ari, how many matches?
What's his name?
None.
It was it Brandon or Ari or something like that. I remember his face completely. Oh, it's going to bug me. I wish I'd looked into it before I came on. I need, like, you know, like how Rogan has a Jamie, like someone like, you know, Jamie, bring this up. Maybe one day I can have a Jamie.
I thought that's what Naki was for.
Yeah, he's just sitting here, just bringing up stuff. Anyone who listens to this, please comment that guy's name. If you're around of Submissions 101, the only guy who used to put anything on YouTube when at the beginning.
I had before I even did BJJ, I got the Gracie's in Action tapes. It was like a third-hand re-recording on VHS.
Whoa.
And also Craig Kukak and Henzo Gracie's 1,000,001 Techniques. I don't know. They put out this massive volume of content. I haven't even seen it for decades. I can't verify whether the techniques were any good or not. But it was the usual thing. You got Craig Kukak, who's 10 foot tall, immense. Yeah, so this is how you put a headlock in. This is a cross collar choke. This is like, and it just looked like a gigantic mountain gorilla doing a technique. I think this doesn't talk to me. I watched the whole thing and I thought, put it to one side, going, it's not very useful. So let's go to proper class.
Like all the other ones were like Mario Sperry and.
Hey, Mario Sperry's a legend, and they were good.
He is. Did you go to the ADCC in 2011 then?
Yeah, so Mario.
Nice.
Yeah. A bit
that?
disappointed. I was expecting more fireworks, but I think they kind of neutralised each out, didn't they? They were so good that they neutralised each other's mastery.
Yeah. I thought you meant the event had not as many fireworks then.
No, the super fight.
Oh, thank God. I was like...
No, the event was amazing.
Yeah, that's one of the best ADCCs there's ever been.
Yeah, Marcelo Garcia, Kron Gracie, you've got, like, oh my goodness, Cyborg was there. It's like, it was a who's who of the best of the best.
It was the last good one, I think, of like the legends. So yeah, you had Haffa, you had
Cabrinha,
yeah.
Ryan Hall was there. Japanese dude with an all-in-one GIMP costume. It was amazing.
Barrett Yoshida, Jeff Glover. That was.
Yeah.
They all left after that, and it's so wild to think that we were so lucky to get that kind of final. Even Tehere, like
Yeah.
Not Terere. Yakare.
No. Yes. Yeah.
Yeah, Yakare, not Terere.
Yeah.
Oh, dude. Like,
You're right.
what?
Now that you say it, that was the last of the memorable ones with the legends of the game for our generation of people who started.
Pretty much by the following one, it was all change.
The following one was in China, I think.
Yeah, exactly.
Beijing. I did the merchandise for it, and then after that, I think that's when it went to America and stayed there. I think.
Yeah. No, they did Helsinki.
Oh, was that? Oh, okay.
2017, I think, was Helsinki, or 2015 was Helsinki.
The one I wish I'd been to and seen was the one in Barcelona with Braulio's reverse
2009
triangle thing. That would have been amazing.
Yeah.
All I have are video clips and some pictures to sort of imagine I was there.
Oh, it's whenever newer people into jiu-jitsu who are like getting to understand what ADCC is, and Gordon Ryan are like, you do know it was in Nottingham. Like, he's like, what? Why would it be in Nottingham? And even then, like, asking that question now, like, yeah, why would it be in Nottingham of all places?
You know who funded all that? That was obviously ADCC have money, right, to pay big salary, but they don't pay for the location. They don't pay for everything. They don't pay for. Let me get this right. They look after the athletes, so you get prize money, and for most of them, they'll pay for your flight there and a little bit of accommodation. But everything else is up to the organizer of that venue, that event, to fundraise. So whoever organised the Nottingham one, they had to sort everything out in terms of promotion, getting bums on seats, paying for the ice rink. I think that has to be down to the organizer rather than ADCC. This was before Mo Jassim, I think, took over anyway. And so Masaru was the brand that pretty much funded everything.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that's a brand owned by Braulio, Roger, and Victor Estima. And I did a little bit of work with them. I did some reviews. But obviously they weren't the money, they were the front people. Somebody had poured a lot of money into that brand, and part of the advertising was to promote ADCC. And it goes on to a wider question. I still see brands now, since we're talking fightwear and I run a fightwear brand, where you'll see a massive investment of money coming in, and you see your Facebook is probably spammed with adverts from certain brands only, a few small brands.
Yeah.
That costs a lot of money. But there's a finite amount of people you can flog merch to, right? So I also see brands who, like Supernovas, explode, and you see them everywhere, and then you never hear of them after a while. And there's a couple of brands doing that now, where they've had a little bit of investment, and I just question the wisdom of that kind of approach, because you're just throwing money, and without a guarantee of success. I'm not complaining, because some of those hire me as an illustrator, and they're quite happy, and they pay me all right. So I'm not gonna name them, and I'm not gonna say stop. But it's not how I would do it with Meerkatsu. No,
it's that long game approach. Like Tatami and Scramble, like they've done well. I think it was Scramble. Their first ones were the Aoki style spats.
Yeah,
that's really like got people's
rainbow
interest.
Spats.
Yes, I still got my rainbow spats. That's how old school I am. When Aoki was cool. I like how we said we're not going to go into clothing, and we've gone to clothing, because everything gets funded through clothing.
We talked gi reviews. That's clothing. So
yes, exactly. And that brings all the way round. Like, so you now you coach. I went to your gym recently for the Ryan Hall seminar. That changed my life. I keep quoting that seminar.
I thought you'd like him, because Ryan, as we know, is a very conceptual kind of thinker.
I was out at his gym last year, and so I got to see him in the wild, actually teaching class, not just a seminar. And I was like,
is he the same? Is it the same kind of style, or does he save his special stuff for seminars?
Oh no, mad as fuck. Because we were talking after the seminar, we almost turned it into a drinking game. Was what does Ryan mean? When he's going down his rabbit holes, if you were immortal, what would war be like? And me and you was look at each other the fuck? Yeah, it's exactly the same. But what makes it more interesting is that it's very call and response. I kind of noticed is that he'll say something and his students will finish the concept. I'm like, damn, that's impressive. Like they know everything inside out. And everyone. It's one of the toughest gyms and most consistent gyms I've ever rolled at. Like everyone felt like a monster. Like even blue belts, purple belts. It's the only time I've actually felt like, oh god, I need to like really look after myself in here because I might get hurt. Super impressive. If you ever get a chance to go to the DC area, it's a very quick ride out of the city to get to Ryan's.
I think what also helps is that in that area you've got probably a dozen very, very high level gyms there.
Yeah.
I mean, they all feed off each other when they compete on the local circuit. You can just imagine. It's almost like the California scene where sort of the best pushes the best. You've got the DC area, and you don't quite get that in other areas in the US.
No, I think we've got that whole like northeast corridor.
Texas, Texas also. Parts of Texas also, yeah.
That's jumping on the scene over the last few years, but. Yeah, when you've got like New York, you've got Jersey, you've got DC, and all those kind of places sitting around each other, like they're feeding into each other at the time. So you've got the Northeast, which is very, very good. The Southeast, which you've got Florida, so you've got everything that kicks around there. California and Texas, and screw the flyover states. Well, I guess Illinois, like we've got Daisy Fresh and a lot of things come out of Illinois as well.
Yeah, Chicago,
yeah. Yeah, exactly. St. Louis kind of area.
We don't quite get the. I guess if you were going to think of the UK and there was a concentrated hub of very, very good teachers and students, and we're not looking at London, I would probably class Birmingham and Manchester as pretty much up there with some legitimately well-established clubs with turning out some really good students, and outside of the UK, the Irish scene is blowing up as well. So that's amazing. And we're thinking domestically in the Europe, we're not even touched upon. I mean, you've travelled around for the camps. You must have seen what the East European guys are like and the Scandies are like. I mean, genuinely scary people.
Dude, when you hear a Polish accent, you just go, oh no. This is going to be a rough one. Or like if you ever get a chance to go to the Iceland camp with Globetrotters, that's just full of bears.
Wow. What's the best Globetrotter you reckon? Because it's another one of my bucket list to do a Globetrotter camp, and I keep talking about it. I never had the chance, but I think next year I definitely want to, or at least the year after, definitely want to try to book one. What do you reckon is the best one to start off as a newbie Globetrotter?
As a newbie? I think for ease, I think Heidelberg is very easy, quick for us to get to. It's just Frankfurt, and it's a good week camp, and Germany's nice. But for immersion, I think one of the best ones I felt is Maine.
Right.
You're up in the it's a scout camp, like a boys scout camp, in the middle of nowhere. It's like 45 minutes from the nearest urban settlement. And you're all living together. You're all in like log cabins. It's like a summer camp, and you can train all day, and you all eat together. And it's very, you live the full Globetrotter life. And there's like a big lake, and there's kayaks, and so people are going out on the lake and paddleboarding, and then they're coming back and training, and it's very close.
Amazing.
And very impressive. I was very shocked by that one. But Heidelberg's always a good shout, and Iceland if you want good rolling and an amazing gym. I mean, I guess if they live in 6 months of darkness, what else are you going to do apart from eat whale, lift a lot, and do jiu-jitsu?
And they do it very well. Each one of those categories.
Yeah, it's because they've got like a cold bath and a sauna and everything in the gym, and you need it after training. You walk off the mat and like, this hurts. Like, I need to go lie down and somewhere that will heal me.
I mean, speaking of Christian, who founded the Globetrotters, I first heard of him because he was a blogger, of course, but around the same time I was blogging, and he just started his Globetrotters. I'm going to travel around the world and blog about it. This was even before he wrote his book. Join me in my journey, and I definitely knew of it because there was the Fightworks podcast. Do you remember the Fightworks podcast? They would do their annual blog of the year review awards, and Christian won it the year that I'd really made a big effort to do some good reviews and make some great content for my blog, and I never got a shout. And I was looking at Christian going, "Why you pipped me to the post?" And I probably wasn't even in the running, but
yeah, I remember. It was you, Sliderfoot, and Shogun HQ. That's where I learned my first bit of wrestling.
Much was only about 3 bloggers. I never won the award, and then they stopped doing it. Fightwork Podcast stopped doing it. But then Christian, bless him, he said, "Look, I've written a book. Do you want to read it and review it?" I said, "Yeah, sure." I read it, and it just sounded like your wet dream of jiu-jitsu, just traveling the world, just a gi, going to the best countries and some of the worst ones as well. But it doesn't matter. Either spreading jiu-jitsu or joining a nascent community there. This must have been 10, 12 years ago, right? I mean, it's been a while since he did that. And to blow up into the camp thing, Globetrotter Camp now, is amazing, and a very, very important voice in the community. When it's dominated by the IBJJF, he's been an important voice in that. And hats off to Christian. You know, he's an important.
Completely. I remember Shogun HQ. I remember hearing about this Danish kid that was going to go around the world. I then remember the book coming out. It was end of 2012 because I read it literally as it came out. And then it was April 2013. He did a seminar in Bolton, and he mentioned it was at Carl Fisher's back when he still.
Good old Carl, yeah.
And then he did we caught a train back to Manchester together. And he mentioned it was going to start an affiliation for independent gyms, and that was because it was. I think the first UK ones were when he started with us and Nate Leverton, Leicester Shoot. Again, another old name in jiu-jitsu. Yeah, exactly. It's such a great jiu-jitsu.
I've been to Leicester Shoot a couple of times for seminars, and it's such a great place there. Actually, I love their gym. It's like an old warehouse, isn't it, with a glass roof? And yeah, that's when, because I went to a Ryan Hall seminar there, 2011. I think it was when he was over for ADCC. It makes you feel old, doesn't it? Reminiscing. It's amazing, all these names.
So, going on from Globetrotters then, there's a grumpy, bald Estonian elephant in the room. So, I think
your jiu-jitsu dad.
Oh, yeah, I know. He hates that as well.
He doesn't like it,
no. Whenever I'm with Raoul over in Amsterdam, I'm like, Raoul will do something like, "Not in front of Dad," and it's like, shut up. Yeah, so the bald Estonian elephant in the room. Obviously, he came to prominence through Globetrotters. He hadn't done anything really, you had to be in the know to know who he was prior to Globetrotters. I'm sure that's probably how you first came about him as well, his original Globetrotters videos and Fanatics.
I think it was Jun that actually first introduced me to the Preet world. Jun first, because I think he went to a Globetrotters camp, and it was one of Preet's earlier teaching sessions, and he happened to be teaching Hawking. And then Jun had this big debate. He was, "I don't like it," he calls it that. "It's very demeaning for people with that syndrome," or whatever. Jun obviously has an objection to the name, and fair enough. And that I picked up on that conversation. I thought, well, what do you mean? What is Hawking? What is this? So I looked up whatever the video was recorded at the time. This looks really weird and interesting. Had a play with it. Wasn't really convinced with it. Put it down. And then COVID happened. So when COVID happened, I thought, what am I going to do with all this time? Like everyone else, just could do a deep dive in all the instructionals that you bought and never watched of Fanatics. And one of them was, there was a daily deal on Preet's grilled chicken, actually. Grilled chicken. And I thought, I like this. I'll use it whenever gyms legally set up again. And at the same, but I quite like the concepts. And then his other videos came on daily deal, so I bought pretty much everything on Preet. And just over the period of 3 or 4 months, did a deep dive and ingested whatever I could, watched all the Globetrotter videos. And then luckily my friend had converted his garage into a dojo. This was still during lockdown, but when we were allowed to have a bubble of some sorts. I don't know. Maybe I shouldn't drop him in it, but anyway, it was during a time when not many people were supposed to be training, but I thought, fuck this. So pretty much a couple of times a week, 2, 3 times a week, I would go to his gym, and he's a purple belt, really good purple belt, and his wife is a blue belt. So I knew I was going to get some good rolls in. What a great chance to try this stuff I've been learning. So that's the chance. So for the next ensuing 3, 4 months, when we were still in the basement, all I was doing was the defensive BJJ stuff. And your video helps as well, though. I can't remember the timing of that, but you must have done that defend everything before COVID, didn't you?
I think
it was before.
One
was it
month
just
into
after?
being a black belt. No, it was April 2019. 4 years now.
Yeah, it was before. Yeah.
Yeah.
So all these, I knew that Prit wasn't alone in these concepts. That with your content and latterly Raoul and a couple of other sort of voices supporting that there was a thing there. It wasn't just some maverick dude showing you some weird shit. It was supported by other people who said, look, I've used this. This is how I interpret it. So I thought, well, this really speaks to me as a small guy, as an old guy. I'm not very fast, and I don't particularly want to be athletic against like young 25-year-olds. What can I do? And Preet's almost synopsis before he teaches a seminar of why he teaches it and what it's used for spoke to me, and that's why I thought I persisted with it, because I love Preet. He's an interesting fella, but you do have to persist to absorb the information that he's trying to give you, because that boy can talk.
You came to a Preet camp at my gym, and that was it, like 16 hours we usually put those things on for over a Saturday and a Sunday, and he fills the time.
I think he taught 2 techniques.
I think the first one he did back in 2000, and it may have been the end of 2017, was 16 hours on grilled chicken over 2 days.
But you got damn good at grilled chicken after that.
Yeah, you had no choice. You had no choice but to just absorb and listen. I think as well, because nothing had come out at that point. I'd met him at the Copenhagen camp, and I met him again at Heidelberg, and I was like, oh damn, could I get you to the UK? And so, because there was no content that he'd made online at this point, trying to convince people to come to the seminar, I was like, oh no, there's this guy, like, he's really good, like, you'll really like him. Like, maybe not like him, but he teaches some good stuff.
Preet does a good job of not making you like him. He's and not give a shit whether he does. But he must have some sort of soft spot, because he does notice when Reddit kicks off, and he goes, they're bitching about me on Reddit again. Here you go. Here's the link. Just say what you want to say.
He's a softie. He loves Britney Spears. And that's not a joke. Like he
I'm sure.
He's softened a lot compared. I think some of the first words I ever heard him say at the first camp were, "I'm going to force you all into close guard and heel hook you. You don't have a choice." I'm like, he's hilarious. So, and this is what's interesting there, is like you say, you saw the value, I guess, of defensive BJJ. I came down, and this is going to sound weird, I came down to see you 2021. Was it 2021?
That was before COVID then? Was that after?
No, it was just after we kind of all came back around and could train again. It was about maybe October 2000.
Exactly. I'm going to type it up right now.
Seminar
report. Oh no, I didn't do a review of you.
Oh.
I just mentioned you on... I didn't do a blog review. Oh, sorry. Next time you come, I'll do a blog review.
It's okay.
Yes, you pretty much echoed what I had been learning through on video form, and to see it live in the flesh against somebody who's like who's absorbed this and reinterpreted it in his own way through yourself, I thought was really good. And some of my guys still talk about it. Nipple on the floor, and your little interesting catchphrases. I thought, but that's the value I think in what Preet is showing, is that he embraces the fact that people like you, Raoul, and whoever else, myself, I guess, have reinterpreted and have found my way of using it to my advantage, sometimes to my disadvantage. But then it's a work in progress. It's a constant work in progress, which I also like that idea. For any instructor who says this is a technique, do it properly, or you're not doing it properly, I think is a bit closed-minded. Everything is open to interpretation and adaptation and evolving.
I guess that kind of goes on to the overarching point then that we've been building towards, is that you came through in the early days of jiu-jitsu. You couldn't be more regimented with Simon, Dickey, and Wilson and all those early Carlson guys. Like, it was they have a style, shall we say. Then Eddie, who went very much down the Gracie self-defense route eventually, so that was his styling. Then the fantastic Nick over at Mill Hill, and he's churned out some fantastic people, and obviously through a RGA kind of background plus his own stylings, to then go into all the instructions you picked up over the years, plus then the very, very different style of Preet. Is how did you find coming through the route you did to then bring in that information and change up? How did it change up your game and how you coach?
So I think one of the best things that happened to me was lockdown, where I had that opportunity to just roll day after day with my friends, without the peer pressure, if you like, and without any instructor or coach looking at me. Sometimes I'd film those recordings and critique myself. We've carried on that tradition, by the way. We still roll just once a week now, and it's, what is it now, 2 years solidly. And really, that's my training time. You're probably the same. I'm at a level where I hesitate to say I don't need a coach, but I'm okay with coaching myself, and I know when I've fucked up, and I know how to correct it next time I fuck up. And so for me personally, my biggest growth ability has been since I haven't had a coach, and I've just been doing my own stuff, picking and choosing techniques that I know are my weaknesses, working more on my strengths. Oh, this looks interesting, like Kid in the Candy Store. Let's try a bit of that. And I don't even drill. I just try them in sparring, and if I fuck up, I try it the next week, and if it really isn't for me, I'll put it to one side. So that's one aspect of my personal growth and how I've used different strands of things. Sometimes a TikTok video that looks kind of funny and it's like 20 seconds of content. I think, I can try that. I'll do it shittily, but over time I think there's merit in it. I'll do my version of it. And the other strand where I think I've really grown since I got my black belt is teaching. Okay, and you find that yourself. When you teach something, you can teach it the way you do it, and if your student is fucking it up, is it because he's shit, or is it because I'm a shit teacher? Can I adapt what I taught into that suits him, because his elbow is a bit like this and his neck is a bit like that and his body isn't the same. So I've got better at that, and the two things come together, and that's what makes me me now. I think I'm still quite shit as a black belt, but I'm better as Seymour Yang than I was 5 years ago, that's for sure. Does that answer your question, or did I completely go off on a tangent?
No, that's the interesting thing. And this is where I really am interested in. So you mentioned there, almost I'm loath to say it. It seems to be the current controversial buzzword of ecological approach, coaching or training, etc. And I think as soon as you say it, it turns people off who are like, well, no, this is just modern woo woo or something. But there's a lot of value in it, in that, I remember Keenan saying it at a seminar 9 years ago, when he said, oh yeah, I don't drill. I might drill to warm up, but I take a technique and then I want to see if it works in sparring. Or if I have an idea, I want to see if I can make it work in sparring. And that's how essentially Wormguard came around. Then Lachlan was saying something very similar in regards to, since pretty much purple belt, it was a sense of, I'm going to go into positions and try and catch people and stuff, and if they get through, then I'll do it again. Then you're saying the same as, I don't drill. I haven't drilled in years. And that makes it a bit of a disconnect in that, why would I ask people to drill if I don't learn that way? I feel the biggest growth has come since I stopped drilling. And since it's more sparring with purpose. Like, I need to make this happen. I don't care if I lose. I'm trying something out.
What we do now is I mean, with that in mind, that same thing is I also came to that same conclusion going, why am I getting these guys like, you got 2 minutes to drill, do it 10 times when I don't do that myself, and I haven't done since probably purple belt. So what I've done is tweaked how I run a class now. So I'll teach a technique, they get to try it a few times, and then we do King of the Hill. It kind of works for things like guard passing and sweeps and that sort of thing. It doesn't quite work for other positions where you pretty much have to start from a certain weird position where it doesn't work in King of the Hill. But I still try and make it work. And the feedback I got from the students has been so much more positive, because saying we love this sort of moving on to straight to using it against resistance type of thing. It does befuddle a few people who generally have coordination issues and hand-eye learning, seeing something and doing it things. So I try to help them out a bit. But for most students, they much prefer that format where there's slightly less drilling and more use of it in a scenario that seems more real.
Completely. And I think it makes it then easier to bring in those concepts. I think when you go very detail heavy and you're asking someone to remember, I think when you get like top of the tree, as in, very fine detailed submission stuff, like, yeah, okay, you have to kind of give full detail. But when it comes to guard passing or guard retention or escaping from something, it's chaos. And to ask someone to replicate chaos, or replicate something within chaos, you're waiting for particles of smoke to realign, and it's crazy. And so it does really change up then, I say, class structures that I wouldn't do this. Why would I ask you to do it? And setting a goal and asking them to fulfill it, which I imagine is very different to most of the learning you did prior to teaching, like, from Eddie, Nick, and Wilson, etc. Going from that then is, so you have 20 years in this. So you're 54 now. You started at 34. I'm 36. Yeah. So yeah, dude, I feel old now. I don't know if it's the mileage of jiu-jitsu. Like, if I just started jiu-jitsu now and had to take beatings, oh man, like
and be 9 stone.
Yeah. Oh, actually, no. I used to fight under 12. I was a lot smaller than I am now. I used to cut aggressively. So I do remember being a small person in a room full of very big people. Oh man, I wouldn't. Most days I feel like the world is ending. Like, let alone like doing it like in my 40s. So where do you think this is going to go then? As it's quite interesting is that there's obviously a lot of holdouts. Especially, like, say, Preet gets shit on Reddit when it comes to his coaching, and Greg Soder seems to be argued against, and various other people. Is, how do you see coaching? Obviously has changed in the 20 years you've done. Where do you think it's going to go then, in regards to stylistically compared to where jiu-jitsu has been?
I think shall we say, the orthodox approach of, here's a technique, copy it, drill it, now we do sparring, that will form the basis of most gyms going forward, regardless of whatever changes there are. What we're seeing now at our club now is I'm tweaking it so there's a little bit more resistance training, and I also dedicate more time to sparring. It used to be that I could teach 3 or 4 techniques and, we've got 10 minutes for sparring, there you go, you got 1 round, where I'll try and teach 2 techniques and now you have 40 minutes of sparring. But it's handy. I teach a 2-hour class. I teach on 1 hour fundamentals, and I teach the second hour. I pretty much do 1 technique and then the rest of it's sparring. So the guys who stay for the full 2 hours, they're getting a really good session. The guys who only come for 1 hour, the first hour, tend to be the beginners who aren't interested in full-on sparring. They still get a little bit. So I think that balance sorts itself out. So I think in terms of the way things are taught, that isn't going to change too much, albeit with a few tweaks. What I can see changing a lot more is you get two things. You're either going to specialize in, for example, the London Grapple. They pretty much all no-gi, aren't they? And they're all pretty much focused on the ADC style of format and a submission wrestling type of thing. Or you've got traditional jiu-jitsu clubs like Nick's, Mill Hills, Our Rogers, that sort of thing. But what I've been doing, and I talk regularly with my business partner Sandeep, who is the head coach at RGA South Hearts, is to take elements of other things so that students get the best all-round experience, which in a full-time club, as you probably know, even then it's quite hard to slot something into a timetable. Look, I think we should do a little bit of combat jiu-jitsu where we're punching our faces in while we're trying to grapple. Where can we put that in? Well, as a kids class, let's shove that up there. Okay, put a bit of punchy kicky stuff with the grappling in. Right, well, where do we do self-defense? We don't do self-defense. We might mention it in class. Okay, get rid of self-defense stuff. Okay, but what are the guys who don't want to compete? They don't want to do competition training every single day. All right, let's focus on techniques on Monday. And so, but we're trying to give a more authentic all-round experience. And I'm proud that we've got 50% gi, 50% no gi, which never happened back when I started. When I started, gi was the only thing you could do, and no gi was for weirdos, right? And poor people who couldn't afford the gi. And as a gi reviewer, I looked down on the no gi people.
That, I think, is why there was more no-gi up in the north. It's always been no-gi up here, is that we're just poorer. Weirdly, that's... Again, I need to check sources, but I'm, just slight side there, is I'm pretty sure that is why leg locks were banned. Is that... I know, weird. So it's classism. Is that you had middle-class kids back in Brazil who could afford gis and could afford jiu-jitsu, and then you had the poorer luta livre kids in the slums who were based on British catch wrestling essentially, and they had leg locks. And so when the Tudo fights would happen between the middle-class jiu-jitsu kids and the poorer luta livre kids, the luta livre kids would win with leg locks, and it was like, oh, you won with your poor kid technique. And so that's then essentially why it was kind of banned, is that it was essentially classism of middle class kids not liking that they were losing to poor kids. And you can see that a lot with you can definitely be interested in a little study on that, of where pockets of jiu-jitsu sat. It was very much in the cities and people could afford the gis, etc. But you start going out into the north where it was a bit more impoverished. No gi was king. Like, the gi did not come up here, even though it's colder. Is that those early days trying to get like a Black Eagle or any of those? Like, no, we'll just roll in the cold with hoodies on then. Like going to an old competition in Manchester in like 2009 looked like an EDL rally. It was just skinheads everywhere. It was skinheads and tattoos and no gi everywhere.
I think one of the best things that has happened on the recent scene in the UK is the popularity of grappling industries. They changed the rule set. They said you can reap from white belt, you can wrist lock from white belt, at blue belt you can toe hold and knee bar, and but you still can only heel hook from, I think, brown belt onwards. So they kept the best bits of what they saw as the rule set, and then they adapted it, got rid of the shitty bits like knee reaping, which is a ridiculous rule, right? Because you could get single leg X, and if it anatomically makes sense to just drag your foot across their belly button so the uke turns in that sort of way, but that's illegal, if you initiate it. But nothing's happening. He's not injured. You're not allowed to trap the leg and all that. So that's that. I'm glad they've done that. So now that's forced us as coaches to change our syllabus, right? So it used to have a good excuse going, you're not allowed to do this technique because you'll get DQ'd in competition. Now we have to say, right, in an IBJJF competition you're not allowed to do this, but grappling industries and Naga and this and that you can. So we're going to teach it to you anyway. So now we're teaching knee reaping, but we have to specify the rules. But that's great, right? Because in the old days it was like simply, you're not allowed to do this technique. End of story. That's not jiu-jitsu. Jiu-jitsu is constantly moving and evolving, and don't you want to be an effective grappler, right?
Which is weird, because I'm pretty sure the old UMA you could knee bar, because I remember winning quite a few fine knee bars
Yes.
very early on, like in the no-gi kind of world. Like a lot of that stuff has kind of always been there up in the north. And so I remember like Matty Holmes. We had a fight, I think 2011, 2012, and I think I got him in a knee bar. And you think those are early days. I remember doing inverted knee bars on people at like 2011, so it would have been intermediate level to like blue belts. And that's what caught me off guard eventually when I started to understand more of what BJJ was. Like, oh, you can't knee bar? Like, it was the strangest thing. It was interesting, that kind of north-south divide in that kind of way. Like, you go north of Watford and it all kind of changes in regards to jiu-jitsu, or as soon as you come out of Birmingham, I guess. I'd say grappling industries, absolutely, but I think it was Metamoris. When money appeared, and essentially they were the first pay-per-view jiu-jitsu event, and people were winning with leg locks. I think that was the first kind of like, oh damn, like this is big. Like, we need to start all playing this. And then obviously Polaris followed, and Naga and grappling industries then got bigger. But yeah, Eddie Bravo, man.
Yeah, no, I appreciate the professional fight scene has ballooned. The point I was trying to make is that as a coach of your regular hobbyist student, right? Grappling industries is a hobbyist competition, right? Your average white belt is going to turn up. Now, if he only ever learnt IBJJF rules, he's going to get reaped to hell and back and not understand how to defend it or do anything. So I think that's been good for the scene, because then we've been able to open up the leg lock game to people who would have been shielded from it until they were like a purple belt. And I think that can only be a good thing. Remember, the old excuse was, well, they shouldn't be learning leg locks, they should be learning to pass the guard. Well, why can't you teach both?
Yeah.
I don't understand.
Not my problem, you still lost. Who cares? It's interesting that it's I say stylistically, it's changed so much in our lifetime, but I think it's the fact that now coaching has also caught up with changing practices. As in, we could always, as coaches, see the way the wind was blowing with techniques and bring the techniques in. I think you probably, as much as anyone else from the early days, remembers the introduction of Eddie and rubber guard and lockdown and twisters. And I was joking about this the other day, is that I still get people coming in saying, oh yeah, have you heard about this guy called Eddie Bravo? I'm like, oh no, like, you're at that phase. It's like they hit puberty, like, oh no, oh, their voice is dropping, oh, they've learned things, they've learned what girls are.
Oh, bless.
No, they're gonna learn eventually. But yeah, like it's changed then, but we adapted. We saw the introduction of these new ideas and we went, okay, cool, we'll bring it into normal training. But I think now with the advent of YouTube and very smart people having a platform, Lachlan, Danaher, Biernacki, Sodas, it has meant we've all had to look and go, oh yeah, like maybe we actually need to learn how to teach properly and be actual teachers instead of just being called professor or sensei. That's interesting. I think you I guess we can never tell where it's gonna go, but it has been a very interesting shift over a very short amount of time. It must only be the past 6 years. This is all kind of just kicked into gear. Do you think gi will be around much? I say you're already at 50%.
Yeah, that's an interesting one. I think yes. There's still that sort of fetishization of the uniform, which if you want to call yourself a martial art, you're going to have a uniform, right? And it's always associated with the gi. And I think the allure of the gi is what attracts some people, maybe not wanting to wear it, but there's nothing cooler than a guy wearing a gi and a black belt, right? It's the quintessential martial art image, a visual. Also, as an artist, right, I like drawing people in gis, and so I don't want I don't want it to be. I like drawing people with black belts. And if the world suddenly overnight said, right, all jiu-jitsu is now no-gi, I'd probably lose a lot of jobs because, like, well, what am I going to draw? You know, fucking Peruvian necktie, great. You don't even see their face. You know, I want to see gis flapping around. It's it's a romanticized view, and I accept it for what it is. And yeah, you could argue, well, the gi is great for learning gi techniques, but it's not really applicable for real life, is it? Are you really going to pull guard and do spider guard, grabbing the sleeves in a street fight? I'd argue that maybe no-gi is more useful to that.
Yeah.
So when I teach class, actually, I teach gi on Thursdays and no-gi on Saturdays, and then on Sundays I teach a bunch of privates, and it could be anything, right? In my gi class, I'll show a technique and I'll show the no-gi version, or at least mention it, and then if there's a difference. And in my no-gi class, I'll go, right, of course, in the ki version, we've got this version of the collar grab. We can't do that, so we have to now do the collar tie. So know the difference. I'm drilling into them that there's a difference, but essentially we're doing the same mechanical move of adjusting the head, manipulating the spine, changing their weight distribution, that sort of thing.
Yeah, I think grappling is grappling. You can obviously amplify your grips with fabric, but I think the days where people would be lost in one if they didn't do the other has kind of gone by the wayside. A no-gi person can definitely put the jacket on and not feel like they're going to die, and same as a gi. I remember the days where I say gi was the only thing you could find, and people would arrive at Fighting Fit and they'd be like, "Well, I don't know how to grab you." What do you mean? I only grab fabric. That's frustrating. Well, grab my body would be a good start on my head.
Couple of times I've rolled with MMA, dedicated MMA people who actually compete in the ring rather than I'm an MMA guy, right? Legitimate competitors. Brad Pickett used to be a sparring partner of mine because he's my size. He used to go to Eddie's a lot. Apparently, he's been told to learn some jiu-jitsu, so he'd go to Eddie's, put a jacket on half-heartedly, no belt, and beat the shit out of everyone with his wrestling, because his top game was insane. And then at Mill Hill, we'd had a few MMA guys come in because maybe they ought to learn a bit of jiu-jitsu and their grappling wasn't good enough in their MMA class. You roll with them and you can't do anything to them because their top game is insane. Maybe they don't know how to do spider guard or lasso guard. Who cares? Their top game is insane. What they're going to do to you from the top? Smash your lights out with their fists. So I actually recommend people who think they're decent in the gi to roll with an MMA guy who may have never touched the gi and see where you go from there, because it's a different ball game.
That weirdly goes into my whole thing right now in that objectivity, and it's, you mentioned there, come across an MMA fighter, people who don't like going onto their back, and all of a sudden like you realise that what part of your jiu-jitsu works. You think you're good at guard, sweep someone who doesn't want to fall over. Like, it's really difficult. Really hard. Sweeping people who like falling over, dead easy. Jiu-jitsu people like playing guard. It's the cult of the guard. Yet you then go against, say, an MMA fighter or a wrestler in cosplay, and they don't even know what the hell I'm doing, and I still can't make it work against them.
Exactly. Or a complete newcomer who's a bit handy in terms of their coordination. You try and sweep, they're going, why is this guy being so stubborn? He's a newbie, how dare you not be swept by my awesome scissor sweep.
Rugby players.
Oh, yeah.
Fuck them. As a brown belt, I hated those people.
They are fucking solid.
Yeah. Like, just roll over. You're supposed to go down. No. Oh, I didn't think you'd say that.
Let's just have a podcast where we whinge about the types of people that we don't want to have in our gym. Rugby players, judoka, MMA guys. Like, all I want is a meek and mild, weak person with no coordination that look up to me like I'm an amazing sensei. You're a perfect student, right? Yeah.
I think the older we get, the more the list it's just going to grow. I hate
anyone
young people.
Under 40, yeah.
I hate people who can see. Like,
Wait, no, blind grapplers are awesome. I rolled with I rolled with a blind person who was really good. I rolled with a one-armed guy, and he caught me he submitted me with his spare arm. I haven't rolled with someone who has had who's been an amputee yet, but I'm just adding to my list of people who have tapped me, who are less able-bodied than me. I think, but that's the beauty of jiu-jitsu. They use jiu-jitsu to suit them, and I think that's amazing.
We had a student. He was co-training with us and Bedlam. He still does train with Bedlam, Jake, and he blind. He came in with his stick trying to find a changing room. But, it really changed how I like to teach him. But apparently he had a judo background, and I think fantastic. Like, because obviously once he got his gi grips, he was quite a dangerous guy. But then I thought, what kind of parent would would think this? My son doesn't know what's about to happen to him. Come here. There's some interesting people. But he was a demon. Like he got hold of your gi and you'd be like, God damn, like, get off me. So I think Morgan as well. I think one of his competitions, he rolled against a guy with one arm. I think it might have even been Sam K, because it was about the same kind of time period. I think Morgan went for an armbar on him and then realized he didn't have an arm, and felt like the ref is cheating. Like you can't just hide it like that. But yeah, it's beauty of jiu-jitsu is that it attracts all those people. But yeah, so I happily take all those people. Just fuck the wrestlers and fuck the rugby players and fuck the MMA fighters and fuck 20-year-olds in general. Like the ones who found TRT way too early. Nah, don't want that. So what's your upcoming plans? So have you anything on the horizon, or is it just business as usual?
It's business as usual. My wife is currently a bit out of action at the moment. She's got sciatica, so I've had to cut down on a lot of the extracurricular stuff I do, or rather not be so committed. So, for example, this weekend was meant to be a charity grapathon that Jun is organising, and I've been going about 11 years, and I've been to every single one. So this will be the first one I don't go to, so I'm a bit disappointed about it. But I just can't afford the time to drive to Bristol and back down again, because who's going to drive my son to gymnastics? Who's going to take Amy to piano? Who's going to do this? So my wife can't drive at the moment, and this looks like a long-term thing. She's just had an MRI, and it's definite bulging disc, which is creating a pain on the trapped nerve. So we're waiting for the doctor to see. But anyway, that's beside the point. The point is, if I'm busy, it's just because I've had to do a lot more of the domestic stuff. But I'm still teaching. So my jiu-jitsu activities are, I train with my buddies Jason and Gosha. Shout out to the White Basement podcast, a rival podcast to yourself. But so I train with them once a week. You can cut that bit out. I challenge you to have as weird a selection of guests as they have. If you just look at the roll call of who they've had on, it's a real test of your willingness to be open-minded, shall we speak. But they know that, they know what they're doing. So anyway, I train with them once a week. I teach twice a week. I have privates, and if I have time, I'll try to go to an open mat. But the gym's literally. Sandeep did me a favor. He opened up when we reopened after COVID. You've been there. That's 2 minutes cycle ride from my house, 7-minute walk. So I'm laughing. So I can nip down there for lunch. I can nip down there for an afternoon session, teach a bit, go home, have something to eat, come back again. It's great. So that's sorting me out. I've got loads of art commissions going on. I've had to say no to quite a few, unless it's a good regular client. So I'm keeping everything like what I normally do. But anything where I have to travel, I kind of have to say, I can't do that. Although that being said, I did go to Cagliari for the Roger Gracie summer camp in Italy in July, or was it August? During the summer anyway. And on the mat in the training room was 37 degrees. It was 34 degrees outside. That was in the evening. But inside the room, which their ventilation was like, those stand-up office fans, and 150 to 200 people in there. It was by my estimate, approaching 37, 38 degrees. In the gi. Of course, none of the Brazilians were sweating. They're used to it, right?
No.
And there's me, and I was dying. I was absolutely dying. And I thought, you know what? I've been to... It was every day for 4 days, 3 days. I went to 2 sessions. I thought, fuck this. I'm just going to be a tourist. And I enjoyed Cagliari's food and wine and beaches just like a tourist. I just wanted I don't do jiu-jitsu in hot weather. I've now realised. But anyway,
No.
that was my taster for doing a jiu-jitsu summer camp, which you're a pro at this, but that was my first one.
No, it's they are. I think you accidentally became a globetrotter. You were like, you know what? I'm going to go to a jiu-jitsu camp and not do jiu-jitsu. I'm just going to go wander around. That's the globetrotter spirit. You found it.
Good.
We don't do jiu-jitsu. We get drunk instead and go find food. That's fantastic. Hopefully I get to come down again soon. I think we did say after the Ryan Hall seminar I'm going to have to come down and play with you guys again. That seminar changed everything. I'd like to see how or where it has affected you guys and your style of training. So I'd like to come and share ideas on that, because I had to rewrite everything after that seminar, frustratingly. So I'd like to come down and play and see where you guys are at. And you say Saturday is your no-gi day.
Saturday's my no-gi day. Thursday evenings is gi, unless it's super hot, which it was for like about a day in the UK. And which I just said, I said, guys, you don't have to bring your gi today. So that was it. But yeah, Thursdays is no gi. But I literally live around the corner, so we have 3 instructors. So I take 2 days. The other instructor takes three days, and one instructor takes 2 days. So we have a fairly flexible timetable. Just let me know. Do come down. It'd be brilliant.
Saturday sounds relatively easy. What time is your Saturday?
I kick off with a 9:30 morning class, and then for the fundamentals 10:30 main class, which is mostly sparring, and then whoever sticks around really after that, and the rest of the day is free.
I'll see if I can come down soon, sir. Thank you for your time. I did say we'll do 45 minutes. It's been like closer to 2 hours, so I do apologise for taking up a large portion of your mid-afternoon. But it's been an absolute pleasure, Mr. Meerkatsu, Mr. Seymour Yang.
Pleasure's all mine. Thank you very much, and shout out to all your listeners, and cheers. Best of luck with the podcast.
I'll link all your, especially if you're now making YouTube content, I'll link all that kind of stuff on the description. So if anyone wants to go see Seymour's work in regards to his artwork, his general Instagram social media-ness, or like I said, he's now making content. I'll link all that.
Well, there's a lot of since we're on topic here with the Preet stuff and your defensive stuff. There's a lot of me trying to interpret the defensive BJJ on my Meerkatsu YouTube channel, or Meerkatsu BJJ YouTube channel, not the art one, and they get a lot of views. There's a lot of interest out there. A lot of views, a lot of comments, a lot of shares, more than my art stuff. So it's relevant material for your audience. So I think it would be good. Yeah,
I'll completely. I'll make those links to that. So if you listen to this on Spotify or Apple or any of those things, go into Chris Payne's BJJ YouTube, and there'll be links in the description for this video. But sir, thank you for your time, and I will see you very soon.
Indeed. All the best. Stop recording.